Hello and welcome to the Smooth Scaling podcast, where we're speaking with industry experts to uncover how to design, build, and run scalable and resilient systems. I'm your host, José Quaresma, and today we have a special episode where we chat with Martin Larsen, a distinguished product architect here at Queue-it, and Ilia Bromberg, who's a principal solutions engineer at Akamai and who spent 2.5 years as a senior product manager for Akamai's bot manager technology. It was a super insightful conversation about hype events, the evolution of bots over the past many years, and how that led to the development of the hype event protection feature, which is a joint solution between Queue-it and Akamai, with the main goal of taking the fight against bots to the next level. Enjoy! Very big welcome to you, Martin, and Ilia. It's great to have you with us.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting us.
Thank you. And we're here today to talk about a new feature called Hype Event Protection. It's a joint solution between Akamai Bot Manager and Queue-it. Before we dive into that and get into a little bit more details about the solution and the benefit, we'd like to start with you a little bit about bots, right? I mean, why are bots a problem, and why should we care?
Well, bots are the issue, indeed. I mean, it's not news any longer for anyone. We've noticed, and when I say we, I'm talking about the kind of technical staff at Akamai, colleagues and such. We've noticed the bots becoming a real issue since the very early days. And of course, when it comes to security, quote unquote, security in the cloud, it started with the first and foremost, like a protection against volumetric attacks, like web application firewalls. And then, because bots has always been there, and then we've understood and clearly saw that in the beginning, the world been protecting themselves against bot traffic with firewalls, and then it became pretty clear that firewalls are just hugely inefficient against bots, right? But first and foremost, like, what is actually a bot, right? If we try to define it, I think that the modern definition of bot would be rather just anything that is not like any traffic, be that web or maybe mobile, using native mobile applications, which is not immediately or directly originating from a human. Meaning that, so if I'm in front of the browser or I'm using a mobile app, that's a human. If anything else, be that probably the latest example would be the AI agents, which we now have sometimes built into some of the operating systems. So if I program or script or set something to be done on my behalf, but not by me directly, that I think is probably like the best modern generation of what the bot is.
I think it was very interesting that you mentioned that kind of the agentic web, I guess, with all the AI agents. But would you? So I do see the point of that being a bot, but I guess it would be a legitimate bot, right? If I as a person ask my bot to do something for me, right? So I guess it's just adding more complexity to an already pretty complex world of kind of being able to identify what's a good bot or a bad bot. Is that how you're seeing it as well?
That's an excellent point. In essence, not all bots are born equal, and some are good, some are bad, and there is a huge gray area in the middle. So good bots are naturally all those crawlers or scrapers. I mean, crawlers rather, such as like a web crawlers. So Bing bot or Google bots are known as being the quote unquote the good bots. And it's actually, the world is for many years been actually working in even optimizing their content for Google, for Bing, for other good scrapers, depending what geography you live in, Baidu in China, Yandex in Russia, you name it. But there are good crawlers, right? And obviously there are many bad ones, and there is even a bigger, I would say, kind of bot realm which sits in the middle. It depends like who you are with, right? If you're collecting traffic, you're like, oh, I like those bots. Those scrapers are actually very useful. They do collect the data for me. I can find the best price for the airline tickets, for example, or the concert seat. And for the other part, if you're running that infrastructure that serves or sells those tickets or airline seats, et cetera, they are actually saying like, no, those bots are definitely nefarious because they are disrupting, so many things that we're doing, right? So, and then of course there is the clearly, quote unquote, the bad bots that, for example, like download the stolen credit card credentials and trying to validate them against various websites. So from that trove of, say, 100,000 stolen credit cards, they want to get down to the list of those credit cards that are still legit, that haven't been blocked, right? Or, for example, if there's a set of stolen credentials, then running them against, popular sites to see that maybe the same user has been reusing his or her credentials against, this airline website or this shopping site, et cetera, et cetera. So so-called account takeover or credential abuse, however you call them. So those are definitely quote unquote bad bots.
Yeah, it's actually quite different from company to company. What is a bad bot and what is a good bot? Like, is a bot that is in the waiting room that end up buying at the end? Is that a good bot? It did buy the item or the ticket and didn't disrupt the sale. Maybe so. Maybe it's good. But then you can have other bots that maybe just let's say carding bots or denial of inventory bots that just pick up all the items and put them in carts and never check out and basically destroys the entire sale, so that items cannot be sold. So those are definitely bad, but where's the line in that? That's very different.
Yeah, and I fully agree, and I guess that's part of the big part of the complexity when talking about can I block bots? Like, well, let's talk about it. What do you mean, right? So and have you seen, Ilia, maybe starting with you, have you seen how have you seen bots evolving during your career? Right, you said that it was kind of, you've seen them from almost from the beginning, but has there been some big shifts you've seen in how they operate or the kind of their impact on businesses?
There's been quite an evolution. So naturally, the very first or earlier bots were simple pieces they were actually driven by simple scripts, written in simple scripting languages, be that shell scripting like Bash, for example, or some Python coding, etc. Because it's pretty easy to create, for example, to write a simple loop that combines the necessary HTTP headers and firing that request, collecting the data. Pretty simple. Those bots been around for quite a while, still are here, but those are, I would say, benign ones. Those are very easy to detect and very easy to protect against. They're still causing a harm if allowed to be, to be out there without any restrictions or protections. So those were the simplest ones. Then came all sorts of frameworks like PhantomJS, for example, that started or became much closer in emulating full-blown browsers. And I don't remember the exact year. I think, if memory serves, it was maybe 2017, 18, when both Google and Mozilla actually released the headless versions of their browsers, meaning that the Chrome or Firefox could be driven from just command line. And that created, I wouldn't say revolution, but it literally took bots to the next phase. Because if before you could say that, it's pretty easy to detect. You look at the headers, you look at a bunch of passive signals around the request, and it's like, oh yeah, it's clearly like a known framework, right? Like PhantomJS or something like that. Now everything looks like perfect Chrome or perfect Firefox, right? Not perfect. I mean, there's still techniques detecting, and many vendors, including Akamai, of course, are quite successful at detecting those. But that was like a next evolution. That also brought with it various offers. I mean, we're now seeing that from like script kiddies, some students from their dorm rooms, or someone is just trying to detect when the price for a certain flight, for example, is going below the certain threshold. Now I want to buy it. So, scripting something like that, like monitoring some prices or collecting prices from several vendors, you know, then, then like moving to more like a bot as a service. So sometimes like scraping as a service. And there are several vendors out there that do provide a pretty large commercial platforms, which are both built to collect the data, and not just to collect the data, but also analyze, aggregate it. And it's pretty much, you don't need to script much any longer, right? It is a full-blown commercial operation, which also have all sorts of like a captcha solving as a feature as well, saying that, oh yeah, and if information provider is presenting you with some sort of a challenge, we know how to solve it for you, transparently. No need to code it or become a hacker, spend endless nights, doing anything like that. So it is always evolving. There is a demand for data collection. And as long as there's demand, and there's always going to be a demand like that, then there are going to be bots.
The demand part is actually quite funny because I think, like, let's say 10 years ago, we did see bots in the waiting rooms. They were kind of not that sophisticated, as you mentioned. And then, of course, they became more sophisticated. We saw more bots in ticketing, especially. And then came the COVID pandemic along. And then all of these, organizations and bot makers, they couldn't really make money on tickets anymore because they were not really sold. So now they moved the entire business into the more e-commerce part of the world, right? So we started to see the same bots attacking all kinds of commercial products like graphic cards and sneakers and whatnot, and trying to make their money there instead. And we haven't actually seen that go away. So now we just have bots everywhere, basically.
And is there, I think part of the, and I would love to hear from you that I feel like part of that evolution was also kind of with an increasing use of residential IPs, and kind of from that bot perspective. Is that something, Ilia or Martin, but is that something that you have some clear data on? Oh yes, that was around this time where we see kind of more and more bot activity from residential IPs and not specific data centers.
Definitely. So what actually is happening then, back to the aspect of bot as a service or scraping as a service. By the way, those companies usually call themselves like a data collection companies. What they do is, if you go to like Android store or Apple store, sometimes you can download some of the free apps, like a free VPN or some games, etc. So as well know that there's no, like, free cheese is only going to be in the mousetrap. So yes, no, seriously. And what is actually happening is that those apps are intentionally, and we can argue about legality. That depends on the geography and depends on the fine print, et cetera, et cetera. But sometimes in some of those, like a free VPN clients that people install, they do provide a VPN service, but at the same time are also used as the scraping agents, right? So performing those requests. And therefore, as a result, you do see, we do see, as a big platform where we do analyze the traffic from hundreds of our customers, thousands of customers across the world, you do see a highly diverse set of devices performing requests that you see it's clearly a bot traffic, like with all the attributes of a bot traffic. And yet it's not uncommon to see, dozens of thousands of IP addresses, meaning that there are devices behind them. that performing like a scraping or data collection requests that come from residential IPs. That's absolutely normal. So there's no need. One may say like, oh, it's just a malware. You need to infect the machine. It must be malware running on that, Windows or whatever machine. Like, no, not necessarily. People uh, unknowingly or sometimes, and sometimes they just don't care. They say like, oh, the game just works, or VPN client just works, and it's free, and it does the job. Awesome, right? Well, it's also performing few requests here and there, you know.
I also always wonder how many tickets has my washing machine purchased throughout the years, but I will. I think I will never know.
Yeah, I mean, you say dozens of IPs. I think it's more like hundreds of thousands of IPs sometimes. So it's really a lot of IPs that perform these attacks.
Thank you for the kind of your knowledge and insight into the evolution of bots and how they operate. Maybe kind of taking then a step forward towards our main topic today, which is the hype event protection feature. Maybe so we kind of start talking about why bots. Maybe we should also try to then define a hype event, right? So that's this kind of the feature is called hype event protection, right? So what? How would you say? How would you define a hype event?
Yeah, so basically a lot of what we do at Queue-it is to help customers actually execute these hype events. And basically it's something where there's a high demand of an item, or it could be a ticket, it could be a registration for something. And typically when there's a high demand, there's also in many cases much lower supply. So in those cases, we see a lot of bot activity, obviously, because you know, both because there could be a high resale value in these items, but also because it's simply maybe the best way for a normal person to get a ticket, or be sure to get a ticket, right? So we see, genuine users also using bots just to ensure that they get the ticket. Yeah, so basically something with a high demand. Maybe sometimes, most of the times, it's announced up front. So there's some specific date, like ticket for a concert that is set on sale, and it's announced maybe weeks in advance. Other times, it's just something that pops up sort of a bit out of the blue. And there we see other bots, the bots makers will have other bots monitoring whether when something comes up on sale. We see that sometimes with Pokemon cards, for instance. All of a sudden a batch is released and the bot will know it instantly, and then we get the spike. That's also kind of a hype sale in my mind.
And do we have some? You mentioned bots and kind of in relation with hype events. Martin, do you have some data to share on kind of how the scale of bots in such type of event?
Yeah, I mean it's very very different from sale to sale, but it's not uncommon that we see 95% of the visitors that line up in the waiting room, that those are actually bots. So it might be that we get 1 million, 2 million people before the sale starts, and then only 10, 20, 30,000 of those are actually real genuine visitors.
And Ilya, does that align with what you see on your side?
Practically, it does align very well, and that's pretty much the reason why actually both companies kind of joined forces in helping and collaborating on building this solution. But yes, indeed, be that a spontaneous event that maybe someone like let's say a celebrity announced something, and then the crowds are rushing to buy it. That creates a sharp spike in traffic, which is always a big issue for infrastructure which is serving that traffic. It can be a well-planned event. Again, if sale is starting at some point, it can be just gradual events. So, like for example, what we're seeing for the holidays are coming. Holidays, at least in North America, with Thanksgiving, with its famous Black Friday and Cyber Monday afterwards, right? That, I mean, we don't see a super sharp. I mean, there's still a certain kind of rise of the traffic. Then it goes a little slower because people get to the table and eat that, Thanksgiving turkey. Literally, you see that kind of a few hours it dips a little bit, and then with the full bellies, people get back to their devices, to start shopping because there are deals out there, right? And then you see like another spike, which drops a little bit overnight, and then Monday and Cyber Monday, same thing, like starts again, pretty much. So yeah, very much so. I can even give you a couple of anecdotes. We do see those spikes around, for example, some of the sport games, be that an American football, be that soccer or European soccer, like football, however you call it, and hockey matches and stuff like that. So you see that the winning command and there's a final game, and then the winning team is, for example, you never know who's going to win, right? So I do know anecdotally, once I was told, again, without, of course, disclosing the vendors, who is printing T-shirts saying that so-and-so team is a winner of so-and-so game, right? So what they do, they actually print two sets for both teams. Team A is the winner of a world champion, and Team B is the world champion, right? They know that one of those sets is going to be sold out, right? For sure. And once that final, whistle or something like that, then you immediately see this spike in purchases, like a huge spike in purchases, right? And by the way, the second set of the T-shirts, which have events written on them, which never happen, those are usually get donated. So you may occasionally find some, I don't know, like a soccer team. I'm making this up. Soccer team in some area, like maybe in Africa, like running with absolutely legit and authentic T-shirts saying about so and so team that won the championship, which they never did, But anyway, so, no, it's actually our universe. It's just far, far, far away, so they don't embarrass their fans.
Very good. And as we know, it does. There is also a big impact of that, right? And some of our own Queue-it research does tell us that, especially, and I think it's slightly higher numbers in Gen Z, that they are more willing. I think it's 73% of Gen Z is more willing to to trust a business if they know that they are blocking bad bots and scalpers. So definitely a big business impact with that, right?
And vice versa. So there can be just a couple of unhappy shoppers, even if the event goes really well. But especially if those shoppers happen to be like influencers or so, then nowadays with social media, it's pretty easy to to create, I would say, like a social storm of sorts by just sometimes it's total, incident and by incident, and sometimes it is intentional. But you don't need to be an influencer to occasionally spike the negative, like a PR campaign against certain brand or
Yeah, and we see some of these sales, right? It's not really the earnings of the actual sales that are important. Let's say, for instance, Pokemon cards. I used that before, but in Pokemon cards, you're selling maybe 20 cards or whatever, and there's not the money made from that. It's actually the loyalty from the customers and the marketing value you get out of it. And if all of those cards ends up bots and being resold on a third party website at a higher markup, then you're not really getting what it is that you wanted. Because customers are unhappy, and say influencers and so forth will convey that message nowadays, right? So,
but it is as I mentioned, a very complex scenario that we're in, and it's a fine line between kind of protecting bots, but then also kind of trying to do our best to avoid those kind of impacting some legitimate users as well, right? And the more the bots also look like legitimate users, I think there's bound to be some errors there, right? It's a constant constant focus to get right.
So we've noticed our customers or the companies that do try to protect against protect their events. They often operate with the terminology, they call it fair purchase experience. So again, their goal is to serve their customers, humans, as best as they can. You're absolutely correct that limited inventory tickets or whatever items are out there, it's going to be sold out. The question is just, so in terms of like financial aspect of selling it out, it's going to be sold, no matter what. The question is just to whom. Are there humans are going to be like by the end of it going to be like, nah, I never have a chance to buy those tickets. They announce the sale. I just navigate to their page. Boom, everything is sold. It's just like, who can buy them? And then it's saying like, oh yeah, but there's this reselling website where some people may sell, for example, the like a show ticket, And so some used to like, yeah, there's a seller and he has dozens of those tickets. Like, how did he get them? So naturally, it's been a scripted, mechanism of sorts. So no one is opening like 20 windows on their screen. Maybe some do, but it takes some time to navigate between them. Naturally, scripted techniques are so much faster than any human being.
There's also been like a change in how this is perceived by companies. So at least I remember some years back, like say 5 or 7, then we had this, oh yeah, we're gonna sell out. That's fine. I mean, it's not a problem that it's sold out to whoever. But then, artists became unhappy because their fans are not getting tickets, and the collector's items is being resold and whatnot. And then there's kind of been this shift over the last, let's say, 5 years or so, where there's more and more focus on this, and we even see governments going into the conversation, right?
Anecdotally, again, I can attest once. I've seen it so far, maybe only once, but going to a show that was long ago, but still, I can even mention the name of the artist. Tom Waits was here in Atlanta. So, and anyone buying the tickets had to provide their name. And then before the show, pretty much anyone else had to come and collect them physically, even though it was absolutely common. You buy tickets online, absolutely, there and so, but you still need to stand in line to that window, show your ID, and only if your ID is matching the printed name, only then they would give you a ticket. That was actually the artist's demand, back then. Tom Waits saying that in order to combat the the kind of resellers, that is the technique. We want only like quote unquote, again, enforcing the fair purchase. Of course, it was absolutely fair purchase that way, but as we always know, things like that always come at the cost of great inconvenience, because you cannot be late. I mean, very high probability you'll be late. You need to have those windows. You need to have people there, people standing in line. It was quite efficient, I need to say, but still was not extra like 10, 15 minutes, that everyone had to arrive before the show to collect their tickets. So again, there are techniques, not necessarily programmatic or like a technology-based techniques that, you need to be absolutely sure that your fans are going to be okay with them.
And talking about kind of the programmatical techniques, maybe I think it's a good segue into hype event protection and the feature that has just been released. Before we go into kind of the joint solution, right? That we have using both Akamai and Queue-it in this feature. Ilia, can you tell us a bit more about Akamai Bot Manager, which is definitely part of that solution?
Yeah, happily. Well, in short, as Akamai is delivering the content downstream to our customers, applying all sorts of traffic and performance optimization and traffic shaping, if necessary, techniques to it. On top of that content delivery platform, there's also the security stack that will layer on top of it, right? That security stack starts with, we can think like bottom up, basic stuff like network firewall, layer 3, layer 4 firewall, going up to layer 7 firewall, protecting against like a layer 7 attacks, SQL injections, directory path traversal, SQL, like cross-site scripting and such. And then on top of it, next layer or next set of inspections, if you will, is inspecting whether the traffic that we're seeing, the requests that we're seeing coming through, are actually coming from human beings or not. And then we provide that. I mean, it all starts with detection. We provide that insight in a near real-time manner to our customers, and then they can choose whether they want to mitigate it. And there are different ways of mitigating it. It's not just like a blank denial or blocking that traffic. There are more subtle and smarter ways, I would say, dealing with bad traffic, especially with shades of gray, so to speak, traffic. And that is the idea. So it starts with detection, and then on top of it, what really helps it comes the virtual waiting room, right? I think that Martin is definitely more qualified to speak about it than.
So Queue-it provides a virtual waiting room. So it's much like a physical line you stand in at the pharmacy or so. You sort of get a number in the line, and then you are moved to the transaction side when it's your turn. So basically, we take all the users, offload them to our service, put them up in a sequential line, and then process them when the site is ready. And while doing this, we have quite a lot of focus on fairness and on transparency and creating trust for the end user. So we want the experience to be trustworthy. And one of the ways we do this is this first in, first out, lining up. So and you know exactly where you are in the waiting room along the line.
How would you say that it then kind of, what does it bring to the hype event protection, right? So how do you see these two together working to prevent bots?
I think it all starts with availability first and foremost, because it doesn't really matter, bots or no bots, if system is not available, right? It becomes like an oxymoron. So availability first and foremost. So virtual waiting room helps with becoming that kind of virtual buffer, so to speak, that helps to withstand that potential tsunami or surge of the traffic. That is the a very important value of it. And then, so once we have that buffer, once we ensure that the event is available, now the question is, like, is it available to whom? To bots or to human, right? That's where the bot manager comes in helping actually the event managers, event operators, to prioritize humans and deprioritize bots.
Yeah, and I think that's for me, that's the essential part of it, is that we are focusing now on giving genuine visitors access to the items. And then, it's a kind of a new way of mitigating, because then you can say, like we talked about, it's different from company and use case to use case, how you actually want to treat bots and what are good bots and what are bad bots. So hype event protection is giving some different ways to actually manage the traffic coming from the bots.
Just to summarize, it's not just I think there's one more aspect that's worth mentioning. Naturally, it is brand reputation, it is the fair purchase experience, but then there's also a matter of cost, right? Because some vendors preparing for the high increase of the traffic, they without having those appropriate tools, in their tool chest, traditional approach is over provision their environment. And like provision it for much higher traffic, which is caused by bots, etc. Right? So therefore, cost in terms of potentially smaller infrastructure footprint, and also less human resources, which are necessary actually to be present at the event, monitoring every aspect of it, and also quickly responding to any potential incidents that may come up with the event. So those tools are helping to reduce the cost aspect as well.
Yeah. That's an excellent point. I mean, we've seen customers in the past that have been doing hype events, or starting to do hype events, and then so basically because they see the value of the marketing in it, and then they actually give up because it's just too hard to do, both from the resources that you need in order to execute them, and also like basically bots messing the entire sale up, right? So you end up spending a lot of resources executing a sale that goes sideways because of bots, and we've seen that over and over again. On the other hand, we've also seen organizations starting this, and maybe let's say at that time it involved 30 people to execute a sale, and that maybe come down to, let's just say, a few people after they have done these sales a few times. So it's definitely possible, but there is this joker of bots actually destroying the whole sale, and then we get back to the brand reputation and everything that actually makes it a negative, the result negative out of it for customers.
And let's say that I'm a customer or a potential customer having a peak event coming up. How would the preparation for that event look like with hype event protection? I actually want to ask two things: how the preparation would look like, and then which results are to be expected. We have some really exciting data on some of the initial results because we've had customers running in beta on this. So it would be really nice to touch on those two things. So maybe starting with the preparation. How would that look like?
Yeah, so we always recommend that it's a scheduled, planned sale, that you actually inform the end users, the visitors, that your customers, that the sale is coming. Let's say a week before, 2 weeks before, something, so that people are ready before the event starts. So this is very important, because if you don't inform the users and you just sort of release a batch of whatever items, then bots will definitely be the first ones to notice. So it's important that the genuine visitors actually get a chance to attend the sale. And so that's the first part of it. And then, of course, we need the whole thing set up, the Akamai bot manager and Queue-it working together to look at the visitors and then manage those in the way that you want them to be managed.
Ilia, anything to add, and potentially also from the Akamai side? I mean, would there be anything other than kind of the waiting room and the hype event protection experience? Anything else that you would also be discussing with such a customer?
Oh yeah, there's actually quite a lot, because again, we've been preparing customers for seasonal traffic, for example, or certain events for years, naturally. And so there are actually very well defined, I would even call them not exactly checklist, but like a set of recommendations. And naturally, virtual waiting room is a big one and very important of them. But I would break down like on a higher level. I would start with there's a performance aspect to it, there's security aspect to it, and obviously there are also people, right, running it all. So from the performance aspect, any performance person is saying that the fastest request is the one that has not been required at all, meaning that improving offload, such as various caching techniques, right, in order to speed things up and also reduce the load the infrastructure that needs to serve those events. So there are multiple techniques to reduce, for example, like a building up dynamic pages and such, which are compute intense and expensive. Optimizing images, obviously, for the traffic. So serving exactly the right size of the images for the particular screen instead of like serving megabytes, which are just downsized at the device. Browser cache techniques, reviewing what sort of third-party content is on a page. When it comes to retailers specifically, those are known to have a lot of third-party traffic, which is like you pretty much lose the control of it. You just create, perform first request to that third-party content, and third party brings with it fourth, fifth, etc. party quite often, yeah, which is like losing control over it is, or rather not losing control over it is important. So virtual waiting room is super important, of course, especially when it comes to protecting the infrastructure that is processing the most expensive and most important pages. Those are the ones that you want to protect with virtual waiting rooms and hype event protection solution, naturally, which kind of brings us to security aspect, right? So protect infrastructure against volumetric attacks, just because some unhappy teenager can create a storm of a volumetric attacks. We occasionally see those happening against like our gaming customers quite often. There's been like a big tournament of a particular game, not mentioning the name, and right after that game, there is like a volumetric DDoS, coming up. Why? Because the losing team, they were like, okay, we'll show you. We lost on the battlefield, we'll show you on the cyber field, right? So all sorts of blocking certain countries, maybe like preparing for an event where particular tickets or particular garments or show or something, or maybe years ago it was, for example, like a COVID shots, stuff like that, right? If COVID shots are in Atlanta, for example, I'm making this up, right? Then it doesn't really make any sense to receive the traffic from Mozambique. No offense to Mozambique, right? But it's just like, so you focus only on the traffic that comes from the target geography, which is the simplest technique, right? Naturally. Then rate limiting. So, for example, you don't allow more than X requests from the single IP address over a short period of time. You're saying like, well, if there are 20 requests coming in 2 seconds from the same IP address, it cannot be human, right? It must be some sort of scripted. So reviewing the rate limiting posture, especially before the holidays where the traffic is elevated. So it's not just what your rules, which work well in quote unquote in a sunny day, may completely not work on a rainy day when the overall traffic is elevated, when everyone is shopping, right? And last but not least, people, right? So having people on a standby if necessary, ensuring that people know what they're doing, they know whom to call and how to act if there is an incident. So all those processes are in place and people know what to do.
And I think thank you, Ilia, and the examples you had, I just as a kind of a proof of the complexity of what we're dealing with, right? You gave the example of the COVID vaccines in Atlanta, right? And blocking Mozambique. But what if there's a U.S. citizen from Atlanta that is actually on holidays in Mozambique and wants to buy the vaccine? No, fair. The other thing that also came to mind is that on the rate limiting per IP, then you also then have IPs that are kind of, I would say, benign, if you will, VPN endpoint or something that you would then naturally see a lot of requests from those IPs, right? So it's just adding nuances and complexity to those algorithms, I guess.
Absolutely. There's no single solution that is going to be like a silver bullet. It is actually like a layered. You can think about it like a funnel. You gradually reduce the probability for the nefarious traffic, and so to the bare minimum to make it as manageable as possible.
There's also an aspect to practicing this. I mean, it's not going to be perfect the first time, so it's like a process where you continuously improve it. That's my experience.
And Martin, I know that when I started this asking about this example with a customer or a prospect for a peak event, I also alluded to the fact that we did have some data from some of our beta customers on kind of what should a customer or prospect expect from a bot protection with with our hype event protection solution. So can you share a little bit of that?
Yeah, sure. We've been talking about some of it, and I just want to start stressing that every use case is different. But we do have some cases where we've seen these 98% of sessions being from bots, and if you think of it, that means that bots will have a 50 times better chance of getting the items that you're selling. And I'm happy to say that Akamai was successful in detecting these bots, and that we could actually give the items or the good spots in the waiting room basically to the genuine users.
That's some impressive numbers, and it's such I think a pleasure to be part of that, right? To be kind of helping our customers serving their users, right?
But this is like an extreme example. We have data from other sales that actually go a little bit further and say, okay, there might have been 10% real. We're definitely sure that these are genuine visitors. And what we see is that they actually complete like 60 to 80% of the transactions. So if they're there to buy, let's say, tickets, 10% will buy the majority of the tickets. And let's say 50 to 70% that we marked as clearly bots would only complete 1 to 2% of the actual transactions. So that's in my mind, at least, that's exactly what we're going for here. We are trying to give access to items or resources to the people that we want to, serve, basically.
Maybe before we wrap up, I would like to ask, what are the prerequisites? So if there's anyone listening out there thinking about this, either already a customer or not, where should they go to get more info, and what are the overall the prerequisites for setting it up?
The prerequisite is very simple. You just need to have the proper tools in place. Literally, bot manager and the virtual waiting room. They need to be in place. Pretty simple and straightforward. And finding more, pretty easy. The information is out there on how to set things up. That's part of the documentation, of course. The announcement, I think, is going to be published any moment now. So our customers are going to be well informed, I hope. And last but not least, both Queue-it team as well as the Akamai team, we have all like excellent professional services that do know how to spring into action and set things up. So that's yet another source of information, obviously. Yeah.
We went through bots and the evolution of bots. We talked about kind of an hype event and how important it is to prepare and to be ready for it. And then we talked about hype event protection, our new joint solution with Queue-it and Akamai to help customers, businesses protect their hype events against bots. So really appreciate your time, Ilia and Martin. Anything before we wrap up? Anything that you would like to add?
No, not from my side.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you for the great chat. And that's it for this episode of the Smooth Scaling Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed, consider subscribing and perhaps share it with a friend or colleague. If you want to share any thoughts or comments with us, send them to smoothscaling@queue-it.com. This podcast is researched by Joseph Thwaites, produced by Perseo Mandilo, and brought to you by Queue-it, your virtual waiting room partner. I'm your host, José Quaresma. Until next time, keep it smooth, keep it scalable.